Every NFL offense enters a week with a plan: protections, route concepts, run fits, third down packages, red zone calls. And every plan assumes one thing: if you execute cleanly, you can stay on schedule. Lawrence Taylor destroyed that assumption. Because when Lawrence Taylor lined up, the goal wasn't to run your offense anymore. The goal became survival. Not because Lawrence Taylor was simply hard to block. Because Lawrence Taylor forced offenses to change their identity. Tight ends stopped running routes. Running backs stayed in to protect. Quarterbacks cut the field in half. Coordinators abandoned long developing plays. That's what it means to ruin a game plan. Lawrence Taylor entered the NFL in 1981, drafted second overall by the New York Giants out of North Carolina. Even that draft spot doesn't capture what he became, because the real shock happened immediately. As a rookie, Lawrence Taylor didn't look like a player learning the league. Lawrence Taylor looked like the league was learning him. In 1981, Lawrence Taylor won both NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year, NFL Defensive Player of the Year. That combination is extremely rare, because Defensive Player of the Year is usually a veteran award. Lawrence Taylor took it as a rookie. That wasn't hype, that was dominance. And with that dominance, offensive coordinators got a new weekly nightmare: planning for a defender who could win with speed, power, leverage, and instincts without showing you the same look twice. The Giants didn't just draft Lawrence Taylor, they weaponized him. Head coach Bill Parcells and defensive coordinator Bill Belichick ran a 3-4 defense where Taylor played outside linebacker, but calling him a linebacker almost undersells the role. Lawrence Taylor wasn't just rushing. Lawrence Taylor was attacking the offense's structure. If he lined up outside the tackle, he threatened the edge. If he walked up over the guard, he threatened the interior. If he backed off the line, he threatened the throwing lane. He didn't play one job. He played pressure as an idea. And pressure is the one thing offenses hate most, because it steals time. Quarterbacks can survive tight coverage if they have time. Receivers can win routes if plays develop. But when the pocket collapses early, the entire playbook shrinks. Lawrence Taylor's gift wasn't simply that he got sacks. His gift was that he forced quarterbacks to play faster than they wanted. He forced coordinators to call quicker concepts than they wanted. And he forced protections to slide toward him before the snap, meaning the offense revealed its own priorities, which made it easier for the defense to counter. Lawrence Taylor's sack totals are part of his legend. Across his career, Lawrence Taylor finished with 132.5 sacks, a number that includes seasons before the NFL officially tracked sacks as an individual stat. His peak seasons are still referenced when people talk about what a pass rusher looks like when he's simply beyond the level of the league. Most great pass rushers win one way. Lawrence Taylor could win multiple ways: outside speed rush, inside counter power, through contact and quickness that made tackles overset and guards panic. When a rusher can threaten both the outside and the inside, offensive tackles can't sit on one move. They're forced to guess. And when a tackle is guessing, the quarterback is in danger. Defenses usually react to offenses. Lawrence Taylor made offenses react to defenses. That's backwards. That's why he ruined game plans. Because protections weren't optional anymore. They were the first priority. If the offense didn't account for Lawrence Taylor, the game ended early. If the offense over-accounted for Lawrence Taylor, the offense became limited. This is the trap he created. Single block him, you risk immediate disaster. Double team him, you weaken somewhere else. Chip him with a tight end or back, you reduce your passing options. Slide protection, you create predictable weak points elsewhere. Every solution costs something. And that's how one defender ruins an entire offensive plan. By the mid-1980s, Lawrence Taylor's existence had changed how teams valued certain offensive positions. Because if you can't protect the blind side, you can't run your offense. And if one defender consistently destroys your blind side, your entire roster-building philosophy changes. This isn't just greatness. This is structural influence. The NFL eventually became a league where left tackles were treated like premium assets, not just big bodies. Because an elite edge rusher could destroy your season. Lawrence Taylor didn't invent the importance of offensive line play, but he permanently amplified it. He made the league pay attention. And what's crazy is, this was still early. Lawrence Taylor's most iconic moments, his most terrifying seasons, his peak stretch where he wasn't just the best defender, but arguably the most dominant player in football, were still ahead. Because when Lawrence Taylor reached his absolute prime, the league didn't just fear him. The league started redesigning football around him. By the mid-1980s, preparing for the New York Giants meant preparing for Lawrence Taylor first. Not Phil Simms, not the running game, not even the Giants' full defensive front. The week began with one question: how do we keep Lawrence Taylor from wrecking the game? And that question changed everything, because normally pass protection is part of the offensive plan. Against Lawrence Taylor, pass protection became the plan. Offensive coordinators had to make sacrifices before the ball was even snapped. If they sent the tight end into a route, Taylor might get a free angle off the edge. If they kept the tight end in to block, the passing concept lost a receiver. If they left a running back in protection, the quarterback lost a checkdown option. If they slid the offensive line toward Taylor, another rusher had a better matchup somewhere else. Every adjustment created a cost. And Lawrence Taylor forced offenses to pay that cost repeatedly. One of the clearest examples came from Washington head coach Joe Gibbs. Gibbs was one of the greatest offensive minds in NFL history, and his Washington teams had to face Lawrence Taylor twice a year in the NFC East. That meant Gibbs couldn't treat Taylor like a normal outside linebacker. He had to innovate. Washington's use of the H-back became one of the famous strategic answers to Taylor and the Giants' 3-4 defense. The H-back was not a traditional tight end lined up on the line of scrimmage. He could move, motion across the formation, chip the edge, help in protection, then release late. That flexibility gave Washington another body to account for Taylor without completely destroying the offense's spacing. But even that wasn't a solution. It was damage control. That's the important distinction. Great players require attention. Lawrence Taylor required redesign. When a coach as brilliant as Joe Gibbs has to adjust formations, protection rules, and personnel usage because of one defender, that defender is no longer just winning matchups. He is changing football. Bill Parcells and Bill Belichick understood this better than anyone. They didn't use Lawrence Taylor as a static pass rusher. They moved him. Sometimes Taylor would align wide outside the tackle. Sometimes tighter. Sometimes he would rush. Sometimes he would drop. Sometimes he would threaten one gap and attack another. That uncertainty made protection calls miserable, because offensive linemen need clarity. They need to know who is rushing. They need to know where help is coming from. Taylor destroyed clarity. If an offense declared protection too early, Belichick could move Taylor or bring pressure elsewhere. If the offense waited too long, Taylor could explode off the snap before communication settled. The Giants weren't just relying on Taylor's talent. They were weaponizing the fear of Taylor. And fear creates mistakes. False starts, holding penalties, late throws, quarterbacks rushing through reads. That is how one defender ruins a game without recording a sack on every drive. The 1986 season was the ultimate proof. Lawrence Taylor recorded 20.5 sacks in 1986. He won NFL Defensive Player of the Year, and more importantly, he won NFL MVP. That matters because defensive players almost never win MVP. The award is usually built for quarterbacks and offensive stars. But in 1986, Taylor's impact was too overwhelming to ignore. He became the last defensive player to win NFL MVP. That tells you everything about how destructive he was. The Giants went 14-2 that season. They finished with one of the most feared defenses in football. And in the playoffs, they dominated. New York beat the 49ers 49-3 in the divisional round. Then shut out Washington 17-0 in the NFC Championship game. Then defeated Denver 39-20 in Super Bowl 21. That championship wasn't just about one player, but Lawrence Taylor was the force that gave the Giants their defensive identity. He made every offensive snap feel unstable. Quarterbacks knew he was coming. That was the terrifying part. Taylor wasn't surprising teams. He was beating them despite the warning. Offenses knew where number 56 was. They pointed him out. They slid protection. They chipped, they adjusted, and he still found ways to affect the play. That is dominance at the highest level. There's a difference between a defender who gets sacks and a defender who controls behavior. Taylor controlled behavior. Tackles set deeper because they feared his speed. Guards leaned toward him because they expected inside counters. Running backs scanned his side before checking down. Quarterbacks shortened their drops. Receivers had less time to finish routes. The entire offense compressed. And compressed offenses become easier to defend. This is why Taylor's impact went beyond the box score. A sack is obvious. A hurried throw is visible. But a ruined game plan is more subtle. It shows up when an offense abandons a 7-step drop. It shows up when a tight end stays in protection instead of attacking the seam. It shows up when a coordinator removes half the playbook because one defender is too dangerous. That was Lawrence Taylor. And the league noticed. Taylor's dominance helped elevate the value of the left tackle position. The blindside protector became one of the most important players on the roster. Teams could no longer treat edge protection casually, because Taylor proved one elite rusher could destroy everything. Not just a drive, not just a quarter, an entire offensive identity. By the late 1980s, Lawrence Taylor wasn't just being blocked, he was being planned around. And that is the highest compliment a defender can receive. Because when a defense forces an offense away from what it wants to be, the defense has already won the first battle. Taylor won that battle before kickoff. But even with all the protection changes, all the chips, all the H-backs, all the double teams, there was still one problem. Lawrence Taylor did not need many chances. Give him one isolated matchup, one late slide, one running back stepping up a half-second slow, and the game could change instantly. That is what made him terrifying. He didn't just pressure quarterbacks, he pressured play callers. And once a defender gets inside the mind of the person calling the plays, the damage is already done. By the time Lawrence Taylor hit his prime, offensive coordinators learned an ugly truth. Even the best plan could fall apart in one snap. Because Lawrence Taylor didn't need a series of wins to control the game. He needed one moment, one breakdown in technique, one late chip, one missed communication, and suddenly the entire offensive script changed. The Giants' defensive identity under Bill Parcells was physical, disciplined, and aggressive, but Lawrence Taylor gave it teeth. Taylor wasn't a system player. He was the system stress test. If your offense couldn't handle him, you couldn't run what you wanted to run. And some teams discovered that immediately. The 1986 postseason is one of the clearest real-world examples of ruined game plans in NFL history. San Francisco entered the divisional round with an offense led by Joe Montana and Bill Walsh's West Coast structure. That offense was built on rhythm and timing, short drops, controlled progressions, and precise spacing. New York beat them 49-3. That wasn't a normal playoff win. It was destruction. And while the whole Giants defense played brilliantly, Lawrence Taylor's pressure helped suffocate any ability to establish rhythm. Rhythm offenses require confidence. Pressure removes it. Then came the NFC Championship game against Washington. Washington's offense was tough and well-coached, with Joe Gibbs building a physical identity. New York won 17-0. A shutout in a conference title game is rare. It's a statement. And what makes that statement louder is the nature of Washington's adjustments. Washington didn't enter thinking it could block Taylor normally. They leaned into protection help. They used the H-back concept to chip and redirect. They sacrificed route options to reduce Taylor's impact. And still, they couldn't create consistent offense. That's what it means to ruin a game plan, when the opponent's best adjustments still aren't enough. But the most famous, Taylor ruins your plan story is linked to a moment that permanently changed how quarterbacks were protected. The hit on Joe Theismann. On November 18, 1985, during Monday Night Football, Lawrence Taylor tackled Washington quarterback Joe Theismann. The play resulted in a severe leg injury for Theismann that ended his playing career. This moment is remembered with discomfort because it was violent and life-changing. Taylor did not intend to injure Theismann the way it happened. Taylor himself was visibly shaken afterward and later expressed regret. But the consequence was undeniable. It became a symbol of what Taylor's pressure could do, not just to a drive, not just to a game, to careers. After that era, quarterbacks became more protected structurally, not just by rule changes, but by roster philosophy. Teams invested more heavily in left tackles. They built protection schemes with elite edge rushers in mind, because Taylor proved something that was always true but rarely demonstrated so clearly. A truly elite edge rusher can dictate the entire week of preparation. Lawrence Taylor's dominance also wasn't isolated to one season. He earned 10 Pro Bowls, 8 first-team All-Pro selections, 2 Super Bowl titles, 1986 season, 1990 season, 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, 1986 NFL MVP. Those accolades matter here because they demonstrate sustained impact. Ruining a game plan once could be a matchup. Ruining game plans for a decade is something else. The 1990 season showed that Taylor's influence still carried even as the league changed. The Giants won another Super Bowl after the 1990 season, defeating Buffalo in Super Bowl 25. That Giants team won differently than the 1986 team. They leaned more on ball control, field position, and disciplined defense. But the core idea remained. Taylor's presence reduced offensive comfort. He forced rush throws, altered protections, and increased the probability of mistakes. What made Taylor uniquely disruptive was that offensive tackles couldn't just play their game. They had to play Taylor's game. If an offensive tackle set too wide, Taylor would counter inside. If the tackle set too tight, Taylor would run the arc and beat him outside. If the tackle tried to punch early, Taylor could swipe the hands. If the tackle waited, Taylor's first step gained leverage. In every scenario, the tackle was reacting, and reaction is losing. Quarterbacks felt it too. Even when Taylor didn't get the sack, quarterbacks began shortening their mental clock. That clock is the internal timer every quarterback has. How long can I hold this before pressure arrives? Against average pass rushes, that clock might be 3 seconds. Against Taylor, it shrank. 2.5, 2, sometimes less. And when a quarterback's clock shrinks, routes disappear. Deep concepts vanish. Play action becomes risky. Everything becomes fast, short, and predictable. That's how a defender ruins a game plan without touching the ball. The Giants also benefited from how Taylor warped protection. When offenses slid toward him, other rushers got favorable matchups. If a tight end stayed in to chip Taylor, that tight end wasn't threatening the seam. If the running back stayed in, the checkdown option disappeared. That allowed coverage defenders to be more aggressive elsewhere. Taylor's disruption didn't just create sacks, it created imbalance. And imbalance is the hidden killer in football. An offense wants to distribute threats evenly. A defense wants to force the offense into unequal choices. Taylor forced unequal choices. And because he did it reliably, offenses entered games already compromised. Not because they were scared, because they were realistic. That's why Lawrence Taylor is not just a Hall of Famer. He is one of the few defenders in NFL history whose impact can be described as architectural. He didn't just win plays, he changed how offenses were built. By the time Lawrence Taylor retired after the 1993 season, the NFL had already been reshaped by his existence. Not in a vague, he was great way. In a measurable way. Offenses drafted differently, protections were designed differently. Coaches built entire weekly plans around avoiding one edge. And that is the final definition of a defender who ruins game plans. A player who forces permanent adaptation. Lawrence Taylor's career achievements are historically rare. 132.5 career sacks, with many coming in an era when sacks were not officially tracked early in his career. 10 Pro Bowls, 8 first-team All-Pro selections. 3 NFL Defensive Player of the Year awards. 1986 NFL MVP, the last defensive player to win MVP. 2 Super Bowl titles, Super Bowl 21 and Super Bowl 25, NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year plus Defensive Player of the Year in 1981. They are proof of sustained dominance across eras, rosters, and offensive evolution. But Taylor's legacy isn't fully explained by sacks and trophies. It's explained by what happened to the league because of him. Before Taylor, edge rushing mattered, but the blindside tackle wasn't treated like a franchise cornerstone. After Taylor, elite left tackles became premium assets. Teams started investing top draft capital in tackle protection. The word blindside became a weekly obsession, because Taylor's speed to power and inside counters proved that even one weak link at tackle could collapse an entire offense. He also changed protection philosophy. Max protect packages became more frequent in high-leverage moments. Chipping with tight ends became normalized. Running backs staying in protection became a staple instead of a desperation call. Even the H-back concept, popularized in part by Joe Gibbs' attempts to manage the Giants' front, became part of the broader tactical ecosystem. Taylor didn't invent these ideas, he forced them to become mainstream. The psychological impact mattered too. Quarterbacks altered their behavior, shorter drops, faster reads, more throwaways, fewer deep developing concepts unless protection was perfect. Taylor didn't just reduce time, he reduced ambition, and when a defender reduces ambition, he has already won part of the game. Lawrence Taylor also shaped the modern definition of an outside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme. He wasn't simply a linebacker, he was a hybrid edge weapon. Belichick used him as a movable threat, sometimes rushing, sometimes dropping, sometimes bluffing, and letting other rushers exploit the protection slide. That unpredictability forced offenses to communicate constantly, and communication under pressure creates mistakes, false starts, missed assignments, free rushers. Taylor's presence created those errors even before the snap. So why is Lawrence Taylor often called the most disruptive defender ever? Because disruption is not just about the highlight sack. Disruption is about control. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Control over what plays an offense feels safe calling. Taylor controlled all of that. Even today, defensive players are compared to him. Every elite edge rusher hears it. This is the next Lawrence Taylor. But the comparison is almost unfair, because Taylor's dominance wasn't just statistical, it was cultural. He defined what fear looked like from the edge. He made edge rusher a franchise-altering role. The final proof of game plan destruction is simple. When offenses faced the Giants, they didn't start with, "What do we want to do?" They started with, "What are we allowed to do?" And that's exactly what Taylor did. He restricted options, he forced concessions, he demanded resources. And when a defender demands resources every snap, the offense loses flexibility. Flexibility is what creates explosive plays. Taylor removed flexibility. Lawrence Taylor wasn't perfect. His career included off-field issues, and his era was different in terms of rules and physicality. But none of that changes the on-field truth. He forced structural change. He forced tactical evolution. He forced permanent respect. And that is why Lawrence Taylor remains the ultimate example of a defender who ruins game plans. Not because he got sacks, because he made offenses abandon comfort, because he made coordinators compromise, because he made quarterbacks rush, and because the league itself changed around him.